Yeah, I appreciate it, Sharon and Adam. So I guess the first thing is, why are we doing the TIM self-assessment? You've got the traffic incident management teams. You're part of the national TIM community if you're on this webinar already. But this is an opportunity not just to engage your TIM groups or your committees. It actually allows you to go in and kind of deep dive, make an assessment of where your program currently is, set benchmarks, prioritize, and actually figure out, where do you want to go from year to year with your programs. It allows your regions to recognize, where they're at, not just from within that TIM team, within the region, but you can also assess yourself with national scores, look at other rankings with areas that may be ahead of you in some things to help find best practices. It really helps us as a TIM community kind of figure out where we're at and where we need to be going, and what our next steps are as far as building and advancing our programs. Next slide. So what to expect? We kind of had a little different way of the last couple of years. So we did the 2022 self-assessment. Um, we skipped a year. We did 23 and 24, that 2 year period. So we're trying to get things back on track and do a 2025 and start doing these on a yearly basis. But we're basing everything back off the 2021. We're just taking the same questions, the 41 questions in the three sections that Sharon mentioned, and continuing to move those forward so we can keep that benchmark and keep those questions going. We are discussing internally if we want to make changes to those. So any feedback from you guys would be appreciated, but we are continuing to break these out, and I'll talk more about the three sections: strategic, tactical, and support. The nice thing about how we're doing this now is it's an online tool. You can simply click your responses, do your rankings. There's sections where you can add comments. I will tell you that the comments help us tremendously. Anytime you're filling out these assessments, if you've got a section that you're scoring really high on, go ahead and tell us, what you're doing. Uh, if you're in the threes and fours out of four, let us know in the comment section, what initiatives you've done to move yourself and progress yourself from year to year through your program. But as far as just putting in the responses, they're just drop downs, and we'll show you that in a minute. Once completed, we're still using the 2025 scores as our baseline to measure kind of where we're at as a community, where things are going. And I'll show you where we're currently sitting as of last year. Next slide. So first off, and we'll put all this in the chat box for everybody. Um, if you have never registered before, this is the website. So what also, if you were a previous participant, you can still access the tool at the same location. But this is the website for you to register. It's the self-assessment.fhwa.trafficincidentmanagement.net. So we'll throw that in the chat, but definitely cut and paste that, and that'll take you right to the tool that Greg will go over in a minute. So if you've never participated, you'll start from scratch by registering. If you're in one of the top 75 metro regions, we want you to answer everything. Even if you're not top 75, um, if you're in the bigger cities and you have traffic management centers, service patrols, we'll talk a little bit more about what's the difference on those. Um, Answer all 41 questions. There's another area that where you don't have to answer all 41, but there's nothing wrong with answering everything because again, it does set a benchmark. Um, so even if you're not a top 75 metro area, you're Los Angeles, Atlanta, Charlotte, some of those bigger cities, you can still utilize all 41 questions. Next slide. So there are 9 questions in there that are not necessary if you're in a rural program or an emerging program. So this may be an area that doesn't have certain aspects that some of the bigger cities have. But again, if it's pertinent, go ahead and answer it, um, and answer all 41 if you can. It will. There's 9 questions that are not required in the self-assessment. If you don't answer those, it'll you can leave those 9 blank, and it will not affect your score. So go ahead and to the next slide. So if you've regularly participated, or if you are transitioning, if you're new in your role, but you know that it's in a top 75 metro or one of the bigger cities or bigger programs, we really want to continue the trend of doing these every year. Some of the non-metro, some of the emerging programs, or some of the rural ones, the 9 questions that and they're highlighted, and Greg will show those. Um, some of the things that you may not have developed in those areas, if you don't have roadway clearance time, incident clearance, or secondary crash performance metrics, if you don't have safety service patrols or a traffic management center, or if you don't have certain towing things at your disposal, um, you may be considered an emerging or a new program. So those questions are not required. But again, if you can answer them, go ahead and answer them, and put some comments in those locations. So next slide. So again, I just kind of reiterating again, all 41, if you're a top 75 or a major metro area, you can drop out 9 of them if they're not pertinent to your region. So we'll just go to the next slide. So how to complete this? It's intended as a to be done as a work group, as a TIM committee. So these are the players: law enforcement, fire rescue, EMS, uh, obviously your DOTs, public safety communications, your 911 centers, your PSAPs, emergency management, towing and recovery, hazmat cleanup contractors, your media. You can even make this an event. Let the public know what you're doing. That you're out there assessing your program. This is a good time to kind of put some PR to your programs. And then if you've got other specialty groups out there, let us know that they're coming to the table. Your NPOs, your rural planning organizations, all of these folks, let us know who's coming to the table. I will say this. We've learned over the years that about 50% of these assessments are done by teams in a group setting. But if you're the champion for your area and you're having trouble, or your timing doesn't work out where you've got a team scheduled, a team meeting, go ahead and fill it out and submit it as a solo. If two people do it in the same area, we're looking for redundancy. We'll look at that and communicate back with you if 2 people do it for the same region separately. Um, so we'll communicate and let you know that. So if you do need to do it as an individual, as a representative of your TIM team or your TIM community, feel free to do that. We will definitely accept it if you cannot do it as a group or a TIM team or a committee. Next slide. So this is kind of where we were at last year. This is a snapshot of all the areas that participated. So some of them that I'll call out that were really exceptional. Um, Starting from the west side, California, Colorado, Nebraska, you can see that a lot of those regions were picked up, and they do a good job year after year of filling out these assessments. Jump over and look at North Carolina. A lot of their regions are covered. Florida, especially, very densely covered with assessments for all their individual TIM teams. Um, so, we really like to see that. So even if you're and I'll use Nevada, they do a great job in Vegas and in Reno. We would like to see some of the rural areas start in the emerging and developing. Go ahead in some of these other areas, some of these less densely populated cities and regions. Please go ahead and use this as an assessment of your program. Set those areas as a benchmark. And if you want to find out if a previous version was done the last couple of years, you can reach out to us. We'll give you the contact email, or if you want one from last year, the last 2 years, we can look in the archives and send you examples of what was done previously, so you can see what was done from a historical standpoint also. So next slide. So we do get quite a few of these. Our goal is at least 100. So we'd like at least, two from each state as a minimum, because we know there's at least that many TIM teams out there. We had last year, we had 80 programs, 80 TIM regions that filled out the assessment. So we had a little bit of growth from 2022. The mix was a little different, and I'll talk about that. The score was close to 71 out of 100%. That's a 10% increase over our baseline from back in 2015. The top 40 metro areas, about a 76 score. For the top 40, top 75 dropped down just a little bit, 73.8%. When you drop below that, it drops a little bit more, around 66%. The bigger areas have more resources, more funding. So this is to be expected, and pretty much a trend that we've seen through the past. Next slide. So here's kind of a snapshot of the participants. Almost 100% of transportation, federal highways, DOTs have done a really good job of participating in this. Law enforcement's the next highest, and then it kind of drops down to fire and rescue. Really happy with the towing and recovery participation. Those guys are usually the last ones to come to the incidents, but it looks like they're doing a really good job of coming to these assessments. And then 911 centers, EMS, hazmat, and even 18% media is coming to these. So a really good blend. So get what you can get to come to these things and get their feedback and input. Next slide. So here's the ranking. So back in 2015, so we're at a 10-year snapshot coming up this year. So we were at about a 64%. We peaked in 2022, went up to a score of 73 on our assessments. We actually dipped last year, but looking back from 2022 to last year's scores, really the reason for the dip was interesting. We had, if you notice down at the bottom, it says it excludes rural and emerging TIM programs. So the ones that didn't fill out the full 41 questions are the only ones that we put in this table. Last year, we had a couple of groups that in 2022 were in the emerging and rural TIM assessment that only filled out, did not fill out 9 of the questions. So quite a few of those actually moved in and filled out the full 41. So obviously they didn't score quite as high as the metro areas. And then I noticed some of the big players, like a couple of the big regions in California, did not fill out last year, which those are very high performing TIM regions. So that lowered us a little bit. And then with some of the emerging groups actually switching over from 22 to 24 and filling out the full 41 questions, their scores were a little lower. So we had a little bit of a ding. So don't take this as a loss in how we are performing as a TIM region or a TIM community. It was just a different mix in the participants last year versus in 2022. So next slide. So as far as how we're doing on these programs, so again, the strategic section, 21 of the 41 questions, so the lion's share of it. Most of the stuff we talk about are formal TIM programs. So this is where you have, do you have formal TIM teams? Are you doing traffic incident management training and after action reviews? Are you using TIM performance measures? So we're looking at the strategies here. Really good scores, not perfect. Out of the 21 questions, the highest score was around 42 out of a potential 45. The lowest score was about 13. So, we're still got some room for growth on the strategy. Next slide. So some of the key things that we've looked at from last year's assessments, the groups that tend to score the highest are the ones that are having formal team meetings and doing it on a more frequent basis. Um, the lower ones are meeting informally or once a year or only during major after action reviews. The ones that meet, 2, 4 times a year tend to score really high. Um, so consider um, with set schedules and meetings. So next slide. The next section, well, and as far as the strategic, some of the big hitters, and this is for strategic and tactical. Atlanta Metro in Georgia, Florida District 6 and 1, Louisville, Kentucky, Columbus, Ohio, Northern Virginia, the National Capital Region. Those tend to be some of your really high performing. And we can go back and look at these assessments and rank them and let you know who scored the highest in one of the sections if you need help trying to set up some best practices or do some peer exchanges. On the tactical side, uh, 17 questions. Some of the folks actually scored 100% on these. They got a score of 45 out of 45. The lowest score, 21, about 50% of the scores. But these are a lot of the TIM quick clearance laws, the removal laws, fender bender laws, things like that. Your policies and procedures for incident clearance and response, um, and then your motorist safety measures. Those are kind of the key things. Next slide. So again, scored really high in this, overall score of almost 76%, a good increase from our baseline, almost 10%, but a little bit of a decrease. And again, that's because we had more of the emerging groups um, starting to rank themselves on this, which is absolutely fine because those groups are setting benchmarks and starting to look at initiatives in those regions or in those assessment items. Next slide. The last section, this is one where we tend to see groups either go really high or really low. Um, I think like Central Florida, the District 5 area of Florida, Maryland's chart programs, these are ones that do really well with like data collection and integration, sharing information. Um, so we had some that, and it's only 3 questions. You're either going to get really high or really low one here. So next slide. So the highest scoring of these, typically is sharing information across their TIM communities. Um, it was actually an 11, almost 12% increase over the baseline, where the average is only about 10. So this is another area where small initiatives can actually get your scores to go up considerably. Next slide. So again, some of the higher areas, I'm not going to read all these, but you can quickly look. Arizona, I guess I can just say all of Florida tends to be very high performing. Metro Atlanta, Kentucky with the Trimark Tim team, um, Massachusetts, Michigan, New York. They fill out a lot of these. Ohio, Texas, Virginia, and Wisconsin. So I said I wasn't going to do it, but I did. These are in no specific order. But we are seeing some of these high ranking groups all kind of clumping up near the top of the ranking. There's less things that they can really focus on, but there are items that every single one of these groups can continue to grow and zero and get some of the scores to nobody's at 100% yet. So there's continued room for growth and advancement. Next slide. So as far as using the assessment scores, again, this is just one of the examples about collecting secondary crashes. So you can go in there and it kind of tells you from level 1 up to level 4. Um, it'll give you a description of what each level is, and then it'll also give you some advice on things you can do to move to the next level and advance. So use that as part of your discussion when you're going through the assessment. It's meant to be kind of conversational, and then use whatever you need to kind of get the number. Fill that out, and then and the comments, feel free to go ahead and let us know what some of the feedback was to get you to that score. Next slide. So again, this is a voluntary assessment. It is an online tool. So it's the same questions you had last year. Um, so again, you're able to transition from paper to the online tool. Just clicking in through this, it's a very user-friendly device to use, software device. Each question has a fill in the blank section. Add the comments in the free text box as appropriate. And then, we only want one formal one submitted each year, but the tool is open year round. So if you want to go in and look at it, make adjustments and things like that, you're welcome to do so. Um, and the tool is going to be open for the formal period. It's open now and will be open through November 30th. So that's the timeline to get your assessments done. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Greg Baumgardner with Battelle and let him kind of go through the actual tool and show you some of the benefits of this program.